Welcome. We're glad that you're here. And I know we have a mix today of people who are currently users and maybe on looking for some additional tips and notes. And we do have some things to point out that will probably you would not have come across on your own. But this is also designed to be a wonderful session for someone who's looking at Cloudingo for the first time and needs to begin at the beginning. Just a quick note about our session today. If you would like to get a question answered, know that you can always submit a case to our support team with your question and they'll be happy to answer it. Or you can still put it in the chat window. We'll get a list of those afterwards and go in and get you answers. We're going to start with an overview of where to find and navigate on the dashboard. We're going to start up here in the upper left corner, where you have this Salesforce icon. This is where you can toggle. Each of our licenses allows you to connect both a sandbox and a production org. You'll be able to tell which one you're working in by the blue box with the check mark in it, but it's very easy to toggle back and forth. And for instance, if you want to set a sandbox as a default platform when you're just learning or testing things out, and then you want to change the default for when you log in to be your production org, that's very easy to do also right here. Now, directly under the Salesforce icon, you'll see our tools menu. And this is where we have all the different functions from Cloudingo. So deduping, of course, is the single table merge option. These are dedupe filters that you're seeing, and you'll notice it tells you which object you're looking at, also the number of groups and matches, and we're going to get more in depth in what all of that means in just a moment. But this is where you can toggle between either the filters, which are the queries themselves, or if there's something you want to adjust in the merge rules. The merge rule is the how do we want to merge the records piece. And you can go directly to that section also. Moving on down, the next set is the convert filters. And the convert filters are designed to look across object, to look from the leads to contacts that already exist, to identify where you have the same person, both as a lead and as a contact, and also the lead to account. And that's where the company on the lead matches an existing account based on the matching style and criteria you choose. So both of those can help where you'd like to have a lead be a contact instead of a lead, either as a brand new contact using the lead to account, or to clean up duplicates on the lead to contact filters. The mass convert option is used whenever you'd like to take a list of leads, or maybe you're moving to a B2B or option or an account-based option instead of working with leads, and you can convert leads and have Cloudingo create the account for you at the same time. So it's creating both the contact and the account. So those are all good options to know where they are. Now, the quick search is a more advanced function that's been added somewhat recently, so you may or may not know that it's here. And you can click on any object that you would like, and instead of building an entire filter, you just choose the fields and the conditions you would like first name starts with S, and last name is equal to white. And I could even remove the email requirement. So the idea is you get to put the conditions to find a specific group. And this even works if someone gives you IDs and you want to just pull up a set of IDs and directly merge them. So now you can see it's going to look just like the normal merge grid, but you can go in and handle a specific group of records. Two other functions. We have the import wizard, and the import wizard allows you to take a CSV file, import it to Salesforce. You get to choose the objects that we need to scan. So if you want to create contacts directly, you could do a contact where we also look to see if the account already exists and then create it if it doesn't. The contact then lead allows us to first look against contacts to see if they exist. If they don't, you can scan against leads and see if they exist. And the ones that already exist can be merged to add a campaign or update information. And then we can push clean, unique records. You'll notice that I have the task object enabled in my database here. So any custom objects with Salesforce that you would like to be able to import or to dedupe will show up here on the Import tab as well. Next is our Find Data option. Find Data is kind of a cousin to the import. What the Find Data does is it lets you start with a CSV file. And instead of importing the records, you're using the Cloudingo match criteria. And we can scan as many different sets of criteria as you want at one time. And we'll return the Salesforce ID for the records. And then you additionally tell us what fields you'd like to find. So if you want to pre-check a list of accounts so that you can maybe have a marketing team gather some additional information, if it's missing, you could use the account name, use our different matching styles, and tell Cloudingo to find the owner, the ID, the status, the account type, whether or not you have a full address. So all of that can be returned for you in an exportable fashion. The update filters, both update and update matching, are two different types of filters designed instead of identifying duplicates to let you update records. So things that you could do with the basic update filters would be like update owners. If you know someone's left the company and you want to assign all of their accounts to someone else. And on the update matching, you could then go in and say, now we want all of the contacts under those accounts to be sure that they have the same owner as has been updated. Update matching can also be used if you have matching records that for one reason or another you can't merge, but you'd like to flag in Salesforce. So you can have a field or however you want to update those to distinguish that, and then you would see it. The delete filters are just what it sounds like. This is designed to let you create queries or filters where we would just delete the records instead of modifying them for you. So an example would be now at the beginning of the year, if you're trying to establish how many valid contacts you actually have, what you can do, or how many leads, to get rid of some of the junk. You could say, if we have leads with no activity in the last 6 months, no email and no phone number, well, we have no way to contact them. So we'd like to just delete them out. The other option is that for the delete filters and for the update filters, you can run a report in Salesforce to identify the ones that you want to delete. And instead of building a query, tell Cloudingo to work from that report. Address validation. This is useful if you have customers in the United States, because what we're using as our standard is the U.S. Postal Service deliverable addresses. And so we compare the address you have, first identify, is it a valid address or not? And if it is, we'll update it with the correct ZIP+4, 2-letter abbreviation for the state, the correct formatting of the street address, and you'll have some additional options when you go in and work with those filters. So if you'd like to, and you need some assistance, you can either contact support or your account rep for additional assistance. Finally, the undo restore. And this is the first tab where we're actually going to go in and show you how it's set up. Because if you would like to use the undo restore option, and you're one of our enterprise or professional license, it always comes disabled, because this function requires Cloudingo at the time that the merge is submitted to back up the values on each of the records being merged, and also to map where the child objects were, so that if you do need to restore them, we can attach those objects back on the recreated records. So it can be backed up in the Cloudingo storage, which is our IBM server. You could also choose to back it up in the Cloudingo Amazon or Azure. If you would prefer to back it up in your own storage, You could use your own Amazon or Azure account. And the next step is saying whether you'd like us to do the backup plan just for merging or merging and converting. So you can check either or both of those. The objects to track, as I say, this is so that if we're recreating 2 accounts for you, and then you had a number of contacts, opportunities, cases, task leads, you want us to know where to put those back. Do they remain on the original master, or should we reparent them on the other records? For the notes and attachments, you can do a quick backup, which is sufficient for most people because that tells Cloudingo just to track those IDs so we can replace them. And most customers do not want to use the backup during importing sessions because it is going to slow down the merge a little bit. So you have the option to say, don't do a backup while we're importing. The retention period is 30 days by default, but you could go out as far as 45 days if you would prefer and have a couple extra weeks to restore those records. And then all we have to do is save. And this is enabled for the platform that I've enabled it. So if you want it for both your platforms, if I had a sandbox connected to, and I wanted things backed up when I did merges in a sandbox, I would also need to turn it on for that. But you don't have to set it up for each separate user. Now, having set that up, we're going to go to our dedupe filters and show you some options here. When you first come in, you'll notice right now we're showing all of the different types of filters. But it's nice to hone in just on the object that you're working on, so you have a much cleaner screen. And you can see a few options that you can customize from this top view. Right now, we're seeing the title, which you have entered in the filter name, and we're seeing the number of groups and matches that were identified. This little icon on the bottom will say to recalculate the totals. Now, you can also schedule filters just to recalculate, but not to automatically merge, or to recalculate and automatically merge. So either of those pieces can be scheduled so that you don't have to come in and run them when you first log in. Now, each of the filters has its own set of menu options, and one nice option is to copy a filter. And then you'll notice that we have a duplicate, and it says never calculated because I haven't run this one, but I can go in and add this filter to change the fields and the matching styles. We're going to spend a little bit of time on this section because if you understand this concept, it can be used on the other types of filters as well. So this is the filter name that I was alluding to. And you can, this is the filter name. This is the merge rule that we're using for this filter. Now, if we scroll down to tab 2, this is where you choose both what fields have to match to be considered a duplicate and also what matching style you'd like to use. So we've got last name, first name, and company as my fields. And I've changed the last name to letters only. What this does for you is if you have differences in punctuation or spacing, which are common discrepancies in a last name. For instance, you could have O'Connor with an apostrophe, but you might also have O'Connor without an apostrophe. And letters only would catch that as a matching last name for you. Also, differences just in spacing, like Delatore could be DE space, LA space, TORRE, or it could be concatenated with no spaces, and letters only would pick that up as a match. Now, ignoring case under the other options tells Cloudingo that it doesn't matter whether the records are capitalized consistently. So you could have one web form that's come in and it's all in lowercase. You may have a list that was all in uppercase and had been uploaded, or you could have actual title case, and it doesn't matter. We would still find those as duplicates for you. Now, a few other matching styles to describe for you. For the first name field, if you go ahead and leave it as exact, we have a synonym function that you see. And the little question mark is prompting you that that's available for this field. And what synonyms are? There are a list of things that we would find as matches. So for first names, it's formal names with nickname counterparts, like Robert and Bob, or James and Jim, Kathy with Catherine and Kate. And all of our synonym lists are available over here in your libraries. And we have a number of synonym lists that you can customize. So first names, states, countries, company name clean, and addresses. We all have synonym lists that come pre-populated, but that you're welcome to edit if you'd like to customize it for your own account. Now, for the company on leads or for the account name on accounts and contacts, we have a matching style called company name clean. And the way company name clean works, that's one of those lists that you can edit in your libraries. It ignores articles at the beginning of the company name. So the words like a and the that might be included but could have been left off too. And then common corporate suffixes, incorporated, company, limited, LLC, group, GmbH, ASA, all of those type of terms. The same thing, it could be written out completely, it may have been abbreviated, or it may have been left off. So a nice example of this would be the Home Depot Incorporated could be found as a match for just Home Depot or Home Depot Inc. And the removing spaces for you is what will allow Cloudingo to ignore spacing differences. A lot of companies now on different forms, you'll see them listed, concatenated, all as one word, almost like what you would see on a website. Or they could formally be written as the two separate words. So this isn't changing the field itself. It's saying for match purposes, ignore the difference in spaces. Now, a few other match criteria that or matching styles you can use. Alphanumeric means match on the letters and the numbers, but ignore differences in punctuation or spaces and special characters. For the email field, you could match just on the username, which is the portion before the @ symbol. And we have just a domain match that could be used either on an email field or a website field. Exact is a true one-to-one match for every character and every space. So it is a very tight, high confidence match. First number of characters, first number of words, last number of characters, and last number of words. You can use those matching styles on any fields that you want. And with one of those, you would choose the number of characters or words that have to match to be considered a match for that field. For phone fields, we have two matching styles that are useful. One is Phone North America, and this one uses the algorithm that's present in US and Canada. So that both those countries use the same 10-digit structure. It's an area code, an exchange, and a 4-digit number. And so we're looking to see if those 10 characters match. And if one record had a +1 at the beginning that was missing from another, that's okay. We still find it because that's not part of the actual number. Or if one number was formatted with parentheses and a hyphen, and another one was just typed in there with no spaces or separated by periods, all of those type of variations would still be found for you. If you're a very international group and you need to match on a phone number, you may want to consider Phone International. It's the same type of logic, but it's more fuzzy and better suited for widely international sets where you could have different numbers of required digits or different country codes at the beginning, things like that. Now, finally, we want to talk about our fuzzy matching style. And we're going to look at that with two different fields because it has two different functions. So use fuzzy on a text field like a company field. It's probably our widest match, and it's going to be a Metaphone 3, which is kind of a sounds like algorithm. So we could catch misspelled words, transposed letters, all sorts of anomalies and discrepancies that you might not be able to identify or want to build out multiple filters to catch some of those outliers. So you can use fuzzy Just one tip is when you're making the final selection, you might want to review the fields that are fuzzy a little more closely so that you can use the version of the field that you want. Now, if you use fuzzy on any of the Salesforce street fields, we have a unique function there that it's going to employ your 3 synonym lists for addresses. And the first part is directions. Words like north, south, east, and west could be completely written out on one record, but could also be abbreviated on another. The second piece are street names that are numbers. So we have an entire list built in for you, like 5th Street. Could be numeric as 5TH, but it could also be written out on another record as FIFTH, and we would find those as a match for you. And the third part that it helps with are those common street suffixes like avenue, boulevard, road, or even the word street itself. We have both abbreviated versions to be matched with their full word version. So all of that is available and comes pre-configured for you. And you just choose the fuzzy algorithm for the street. Now we want to talk about one additional option, and that's the ability to say match on empty. So if you use match on empty, you can still use the matching style, which is most appropriate for the field. And so this would say, I want to match records, but I need to match them to the street address level. Maybe we're merging in accounts. And you say, we could have the same account at different locations. That's okay. But we would want to merge the ones at the same location. So we want to use the fuzzy matching style on our street and whatever other fields you would like. But then you know that you do not always have a street filled in because it's not a required field. So what match on empty does, it says if there are values in the fields, they have to match to the degree of match that I've chosen. But either if one record has a value and others are blank, or if none of the records have a value for that field, match on empty would still show you those results. So you could consider them to be duplicates or not, as you wish. Now we're going to give you one last way that you can use match on empty. And this is most important when you're merging accounts. If you have another system, like an ERP system, which your accounts that are set up and have been billed are tied to, it's important to keep that link in place, not to just carry that value over in a merge. And usually people don't want to merge accounts with different IDs for those fields. So if you chose an exact match and match on empty, it would be okay for one record to have a value, but not records to have a value. And so, and in our merge rules, we're going to choose the record with the value as the master so that the sync still keeps up and the blank records are merged into it. So that's one other option to talk about here. Now, you do have all of your standard and any custom Salesforce fields you create available to match against. If you create a brand new field, within 24 hours, Cloudingo will recognize it and have it available. But if you want to refresh these fields immediately and use something you've just created, you can just say to refresh the fields and we'll recognize any new fields. And as you saw as I was typing in, if you start typing, you'll find the field that you're looking for. And we have the display name first, but the API name is in parentheses after. So that if you have a standard field and a custom field that are named the same, you can still ensure that you're working with the correct field. Now, next, we're going to go down and look at options for tab 3 and tab 4. Tab 3 allows you to limit the records. And the idea here is that we can limit the entire subset. So one example with this would be if you're very international and you say, well, you know, I want to break it up. I don't want to see everything all in one filter. And so I want to look just at the records that are within the North America. So we're going to say equal to US or Canada. When you add multiple values, put a comma in place. This serves as OR logic. So now I'm going to see records that matched on the fields that I've specified, but they have to be in US or Canada, and I also have the option to say or has no value. Now, you'll notice that we have all different options here. So you could say equal to and then copy it and say not equal to. You could use this to match just on a certain record type and exclude others. You could do contain or does not contain. And an example of that would be if you're cleaning up contacts and you know you have a lot of test records with your own company's domain. So you say the email does not contain, and then you put your own domain in, and those records are not pulled into the filter. You could even do starts with if you want, and just put the beginning of the field so that we're pulling in a subset that way. Now that's completely optional, but it does limit the entire subset of records that we're looking at to identify duplicates. Limiting your groups is a little bit different. Instead of limiting the entire subset, like saying they have to be in either the US or Canada, limiting your groups lets you put some requirement around each individual group or set of matches that we find. So if we wanted to say, we're just getting started with Cloudingo, I don't want to see groups that are too large for me to work with and make decisions on one page. So right now in this filter, let's only see groups that have 2, 3, 4, or 5 matches. So then all of those would be pulled into this filter, but if I had a group with 15 matches, it would not show up in this filter. Another way that you could use this is you can put a requirement around a single field. So an example of that is, let's say that you've just gotten Cloudingo and your first job to tackle is you want to clean up leads that have been recently created, because you know if it's come in recently, someone's probably trying to work with that record now and you'd like to go ahead and get it merged. So we can say the create date for at least one or more record within each group was in the last 30 days. And the difference in putting that here versus in tab 3, if I had put a 30-day requirement in tab 3, I would only look at sets where all of the records were created in 30 days. This one lets me find my new records, but it also is going to display the matches no matter when they were created. Another way is that you can, if you have a field where you specifically want to see records that you would want to handle manually, maybe you say, you know, if there's a different email address, I'd like to take a look at those in the beginning. So I'm going to have a filter where I say the email field, one or more has to have a different value. So instead of saying it matches, I'm saying I know these are groups where it does not match, and I can review enough to decide how I would like to handle that. So those are just examples of what you can do with tab 4. But remember, you don't have to limit the subset. You also don't have to put in any group rules. Now that we've looked at how to create filters, we're going to go back and talk about the second component. And these work hand in glove, as you'll see in just a moment. But the merge rules are not what records are duplicates, it's how do we want to merge the records. And we're going to go in and use leads as an example, because I have the widest range of samples for you. But we'll call some items out for you. You can have just one rule that's applied to all of your filters, or you could have different rules to apply to each different filter because you need to handle them in different ways. And we're going to start on the third tab and go back to tab 2 because that will make more sense. In this section, we're going to work from the highest or most general level down to the specific fields if you need to put in specific rules. So our first choice is our master selection. And what you get with your master selection, that's where the Salesforce ID comes from. This is also where the baseline fields will be taken if there's one on the master and you don't give us a different way to handle it. We have lots of choices for you. So One of them is the most complete record, and that would be the record with the most fields populated. Kind of a corollary to that is to say, instead of counting the fields, we want to count the notes, attachments, activities, tasks, campaigns, and choose the record with the most of those common attached objects. If you have an important numeric field, you could say we want the number with the highest value to be our master. This is what you would choose if you have an important ID field and you need that record to be the master. You would say the first record with the value in that specific field, and we would determine the field. Prioritizing on a field and its values. This lets you take an important field and you can put it in some rank order. So we're going to look at the status field. And then we want to say, well, if we have a qualified record, somebody's very carefully worked that, and that has the highest likelihood of having accurate information. So that should serve as our master. But if there's no qualified record, we'd like to use one that's currently being worked. And so the idea is that you can put them in any rank order you choose. And when you do this, you still have a tiebreaker by date. So that what if you just have two new records? Then you can say, well, let's use the newest by create date or the newest by modified date. Records. If your company has Salesforce community user accounts, you'll recognize those records in Cloudingo when you go to review them, because there'll be a little padlock and a little person icon over on the Cloudingo record view. And that record needs to be the master, so the link is still available after the merge. So all you have to do is choose the protected record, and Cloudingo can handle that for you. The ability not just to choose the newest by modify or create date or the oldest by modify or create date, you could choose any date field. So as an example, if you say, well, by the time somebody's a contact, the most recent activity is more relevant than when the record was created or modified. And finally, you can choose the record with the value not on a specified ignore list. This would come in handy if, for instance, you say, well, we have new records that come in from a marketing automation system like Pardot, and then we have records that are owned by actual account users. And I would never want to choose a Pardot record over one that an actual rep owns now. So you could build an ignore list to say, ignore the owner and whatever that ID field is, or an admin or something like that. And then we would choose the other record as a master. And finally, one new master selection that we've added, you can say to choose the record with an active owner. So if you had two records and one of them was an old inactive owner and one was active, that probably has better field values, and we want that to be the owner or our master. Now, one note about this, when you're merging leads, contacts, and accounts, Salesforce says if these records are truly duplicates, then it was actually created whenever the first record was created. So even if you choose a lead master, which is the newest by create date to get some of the newest field values, you still will retain, once the records are merged, the original create date on the final record. So if one record was created 5 years ago, but our master was created yesterday, when you merge them, there's nothing you need to do. The create date will show the 5 years ago date. Master selection. This second section is designed to make sure that no matter how you've chosen the master, you always end up with the most complete record that Cloudingo can build. And so this is saying, even with the best master, there may be some fields that are missing. And if there's ever a field missing on our master record, we want to try and fill it in with a value from one of the duplicates. And then think of this as your tiebreaker. So if our mobile phone is missing a value, but we have 3 duplicates and they all have mobile phones, then you can say, would we want the newest by modify date, by create date, or even the most common? Now, if you're doing an import and you'd prefer to fill in the value for blank fields from the import, you can choose incoming record or import value. And if you have integrations going, you can do the same for the API value. See, these two sections alone could completely handle creating your or merging your records. This third section, though, is designed for those fields that you may need to handle differently from the master. So we have some good examples to let you start thinking about. One of them is that usually people are wanting overall the newest, most up-to-date information, but you might say, you know what, the source, our marketing team really likes to track where people come from in the very beginning. So we need to choose the original source. So we're just going to add the source field, choose the oldest by create date, and say always override the master because our master is the newest. You can prioritize fields. So maybe I don't want to prioritize by the status for my master, but I do want to prioritize the status field. Numeric fields that are not system determined or formula fields. You can choose the highest, the lowest, or a sum. So one of the things to draw your attention to here is when you choose a field by, say, adding a field, the type of Salesforce field is what determines which of these options you have available to handle the rule. So go ahead and choose the field first, and then you'll see everything that's available for a merge option. Now, text fields and multi-select pick lists, you're not limited to the information from any single record. And so we can actually give you a combined list if you would like, and you tell us how to separate the values. And if it's a multi-select pick list, of course, you need to choose semicolon. What's included is an example of a formatted field. Both phone fields and email fields are formatted, so we can't do a combined list. But what you can do, because we're not trying to change the behavior, just capture extra values, is go ahead and say inherit the default and the default override. And then under here, under actions, we have two ways to capture information right in Salesforce. So you wouldn't have to go back and look it up for a user. They have access to it on their record. One of them is to say combine the field values into another field. And this lets you choose any text field. So you can use something you already have because we don't override it. You're just going to tell us how to separate the values that we add and then how to divide that from anything else that comes into that field. You also have the ability to say create a field note. And the difference here is if you don't have a field where you want to capture the information, that's okay. You can tell Cloudingo to create a note. And it will be evident that there were different values because at the time of the merge for the fields that you want the note, if there were differences, we attach a note that's called a Cloudingo note, and it's in your notes and attachments section. And so as an example of phone, it could say phone, list the number chosen, and then others, and list all of the other phone numbers. So anyone who says, gosh, I thought I had a direct dial, this is an 800 number for this company, can actually look at the note and see all of the choices that were available at the time of the merge. And you can include as many fields in that note as you want. As a matter of fact, most people don't use it, but you do have the ability to say, create a note for each field with all values. And this is almost like a mini backup on the record itself. What happens is we attach a note with every single field and each field value from all of the different records. One other option that we have is that you can capture things on an audit report. The way this differs, combining values into another field lets you choose a text field on your Salesforce page, or attaching a note. It's still in Salesforce, but it's in an attached note. If you're cleaning up accounts, for example, and you say, chances are we're never going to have questions, so I don't really want to clutter up the record too much with a lot of fields that nobody may ever need to know about. but I would like to have all of those values available in case I need to look something up. So maybe you tell Cloudingo, sorry, for the audit, to capture the actual company name, the ID, the street, the city, the state, the zip, the phone, the fax, the owner, the status, the type. It can be as many fields as you want because your audit reports can be exported as CSV files or PDF files from this reports dashboard on the far left, and you can export that going back as far as a year. So it gives you a nice long time, as long as you've told us what fields to capture, to be able to go back and look up what was on each record at the time of the merge. It's also going to capture the date and time of the merge, who the Cloudingo user was, and the group ID, so you can see how many records were in that group. These final two options are just formatting your final field. You can choose title case, lowercase, or uppercase. You can also have Cloudingo remove blank spaces at the time of the merge. Now, our last option for a specific field rule, we're going to go back to grouping fields. I've created a group called my address group. I made the street my controlling field, but then the other fields in the group, and this is a multi-select pick list. You just check all the fields you want added, but you can see them from the dashboard here. I've added city, country, state, zip. So all 5 of those fields are going to be included as part of a group and handled as a unit. I've chosen to display them together so it's obvious on my dashboard, and even to give it a little color-coded icon so it really stands out to me which fields are part of that group. Then we have an extra option. Instead of the normal options for the field, like the street field, as oldest, newest, all of that, I could also choose most complete by the grouped fields. And the way this helps you is if your master just had a country, but you have another record with a more complete address, you would end up with the more complete address. So now what we're going to do is go back to your dashboard and show you some options for how things can be displayed and how you can do your merging. So when I go back to the filters, now that you understand the concept of filters, I want to show you an option that most people are not aware of. Under Actions, you can reorder filters if you want them laid out differently on your dashboard, but one option you have is to show details. So instead of kind of a bare bones, you're going to see the filter name and description, but also all the fields that are used in this filter. And then the groups and matches, just like you would on a dashboard. And it shows if it's scheduled, but this does not designate between just scheduled to recalculate or scheduled to actually merge, like you would if you're in the other version. Now I can tell this is going to recalculate, but it's not going to merge. So that's just a nice option if you're getting used to Cloudingo and you want to see a little more detail about each filter. And then we're going to go in and we're going to look at contacts and view some results. So these will match on email and last name. You'll notice that unlike Salesforce, you can merge up to 200 copies of a record at a time. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in and display one of our larger groups. And so at this point, these are the actual field values on the records in Salesforce currently, because Cloudingo doesn't store your data. So you can see this record is being chosen as the master. That means anything with an option, I have those selected. When you have different variables for a particular field, you'll have a little radio button, so it's easy to tell which fields. And if you'd like a different version, you can just choose that radio button. Like I might say, well, I know his full name is Alien, but he does go by Al. And also I want to make him a spaceman. But otherwise, I'm happy with this. Now you'll notice if you hover over on the different records, we've got little icons that show if they have notes, attachments, activities, number of opportunities, number of cases. And you don't have to worry about any of those. It's part of native Salesforce function that when you merge those records, we move over all the notes, attachments, activities, tasks. So all of that's going to happen for you automatically. This is what I was showing you about a group. If I hover over the information, I can see what my group is named and what fields are contained in it. Now, on the far right, you have an options icon that will let you adjust the column width. So if I said, gosh, I'd rather see more records in a row, I don't need it to be this wide, I can change the column width and just say save. And now it's going to be slightly narrower. You can also come in and set up the field ordering and style. So just to draw your attention to a few things, I put the contact ID above the full name. So if I wanted to see something about one of these contacts, I could click the hyperlink and it's going to open for me in Salesforce. Likewise, I put the account ID right below the account name, so I can tell at a glance whether these are the same account or duplicate accounts and review anything I need to there. Then you'll have your field order, and if you want to put certain fields together, you don't even have to know where they are. I could type in PHO, and now I have all my phone fields. And so I can say yes, 9, 10, 11. That's perfect because we don't use assistant phone and we don't use other phone. So you can make anything bold that you want. To change the order, if I said, well, we really don't use home phone, I want to move that lower on the page and not have it taking up prime real estate, I can say save. And now the business and mobile are here, but you noticed I've moved the home lower. It's nice to put the IDs right below the name so that while it's the ID that you choose, you can actually see the name if you would like. Now at this point, if I'm ready to merge these, I could just use the buttons at the bottom. Merge and load the next group, or just merge this group. But let's say this is a really fuzzy filter instead of a tight one. I said, I'm not ready to merge this record yet. I'm not sure we should merge him with the others. However, I do know that he's the admin for the account now. So we can preserve that by clicking just save, and that record has now been updated in Salesforce. And then I'm going to go ahead and merge the 3 remaining with my merge rules. To have up here under the bell, you can expand your activity stream. If you have the push pin in, it won't collapse. But if you want to be able to hide it, you can collapse the push pin and then click the bell. And remember, we set up the undo restore. So when we get confirmation that this is merged, I'll show how we can go and look up that. So now we're going to go to our reports dashboard. A wide range of reports. I would recommend not having them all populated on your screen at once. You can add them back anytime you want, but it's just a little quicker to let these populate if you only have the ones that you use currently, and then you can go back and add anything you would like to. But 3 that are really good for everyone to know about: the activity stream errors and warnings. This is a graph version. It almost looks like an Excel file, and you can export it, that has the reason any group failed, the records in the group, where to find the group. So let's say that you merged records, they were older records, and they had missing fields that are now required. It would say group skipped because null field value for X field, right? So our activity stream errors and warnings is going to pass on to you the reason the merge failed in Salesforce so that you can come in and adjust those. Now the merge, convert, and the audit report. Those are wonderful reports. It's this audit report where you can add as many fields as you want. So we're going to go in and see these are contacts. This is my master because it's a blue hyperlink and it says, yes, it was the master. No, these two were not. And as I scroll across, I've added the mailing city, country, postcode, state, street. You can customize this with as many fields as you would like to have on the audit report. And then if you choose to run the report, you can either have it automatically sent out to you or someone on your team on a routine basis, like once a week. I want to get this for the last 7 days, just so that I can have kind of an idea of who and what's being merged. Or you could come in and run it for a specific time period, going back as far as a year. So I could say, gosh, we did our first big account cleanup in October, and I'd like to go back and look at those accounts. So you could run it for October 1 to October 31. Now, we're going to go back to the dashboard and look at one more report. And this is your merge convert report. And unlike the activity stream, where it's just the raw records and what object they were, this shows you by group and by filter how many of them have been successful and how many have failed. And if we go in and run the full report, this is also where you would be able to restore the records if you have the enterprise or professional license. So you can see I've told I've got the contact IDs. And so this down to this row are matching contacts. If I scroll across to look at the other side of the page, you can see the filter name, the run date and time. I was the Cloudingo user. These were all successful. And under the options, if I wanted to restore this, I can say, yes, I want you to go ahead and recreate those 3 records, reparent the 18 leads, the 1,025 notes, and the 15 tasks. So once again, add any of these on your dashboard that you would like, but these are 3 key reports that most people would like to track in one way or another. Now, when we come to the main dashboard, and we're going to go back to the filters, as I say, you can schedule filters, and that can either be done from the filter menu or from the bottom clock here. And if I choose that, let's say I want this to run daily, and it's okay to recalculate, so I'm going to go ahead and say to do that now. But I'm not ready to have this automatically merged, so I want to turn that off. And then I can save. And you see that it's set to be scheduled for recalculation, but not to automatically merge them. Now, this is one of our newest functions. It's basically a real-time merge. So what happens is you would set it up and you would not need to review the records. As a record comes in that reaches that criteria, they would get automatically merged. And to do that, I'm going to put the same mobile number in 2 of my records. Okay. And I'm just using mobile. That's not a very common one, so that my duplicates don't keep getting merged out. Now it's alien at toy. I'm going to go back to my main dashboard. And we're going to open up the activity stream. And in just a moment, we'll see it come through that these records have been detected and merged. Now, a couple more items that I wanted to show you because they're very useful. One of them is going to be the knowledge base. This is what I had up at the very beginning. We have many subjects here on the main page, but if you wanted to go in and review, we have step-by-step instructions and lots of videos in here. So it gives you really detailed help with any of these tools or functions you'd like to use. You also, on the help window, can contact support. So anytime you would like, you can submit a case. Maybe you say, I'm not getting the results that I was expecting. Here's my matching styles, and these are examples of records that are not being pulled in. Or you can contact with a question about how something works. So all of that is available for you too. One of the last things we want to show you, just in case you're in a multi-user account and you have different users, if you're an admin, you can come over and see what filters are on different people's dashboards. So this is Sunny Day, and I can see the filters that she has. And then I'm the other user, so you can see what filters I have. And it will show you the matches, whether they're scheduled, and if so, when it's scheduled. You'll have the fields here. So this is a nice option for checking what's on other people's dashboards. If you ever need to set someone else up, you don't have to remember this, but you could disable a user and create a new user. And so it's 5 till, and this is where we're going to pause for today. I know that's been a ton of information to cover in one sitting. I hope we showed you a few things that might be a refresher or might just be new to you. Anytime you would like some assistance, please feel free to reach out to one of us. The whole team, whether it's myself for support or your account rep, are all very interested and happy with helping you. So please let us know. Hope you have a wonderful afternoon, and a recording of this will be sent out in the future. And I'm going to quickly answer. I see someone has a question. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. We're here for anything else that comes up. Take care and have a wonderful afternoon.